Hey, Groovers. Welcome to WP Think Tank number 2. My name is Troy Dean. I am from WP Elevation, and I'm the host of WP Think Tank. And I'm very, very proud to have with me a fantastic panel this time round, including from my left to right, Alex King, CTO of Crowd Favorite, Brian Clark, CEO of Copyblogger, Cory Miller, CEO and founder of iThemes, Lisa Sabin-Wilson, partner now at WebDev Studios and, of course, author of WordPress for Dummies, Matt Medeiros from the Matt Report, and Tom Wilmot from Human Made. And joining us very soon will be Miriam Schwab from Illuminea. I do believe this is now streaming live at wpthinktank.com, where there is a talk widget, a chat widget that you can join in the conversation. We currently have 185 people in that live chat widget. And if anyone can just give me an affirmative that this is actually streaming, that would be fabulous, just so we make sure we're not sitting here talking to ourselves. Yes, it is. Beautiful. Lovely. Okay, so let's go from left to right. Let's introduce our esteemed panel, and then let's talk about all things WordPress, the future of WordPress, the challenges that we have, the opportunities ahead, and how we feel like we might navigate the waters in front of us. So let's start with Alex King. Alex, do you want to tell us a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and what you do in your spare time?
Sure. I'm a web designer and developer. I started working with WordPress back when it was B2, and was able to get a little bit of my code into the first version of WordPress. I've been doing professional services and product work around WordPress as Crowd Favorite since 2007, and we just merged with Illuminea, giving us a team with multiple offices around the world and great business development as well as technical team.
Fantastic. Brian Clark from Copyblogger. For those of everyone who's been living under a rock for the last 10 years, do you want to tell them who you are and what you're about?
Yeah, sure. Founder and CEO of Copyblogger Media. Most of our lines of business are WordPress related. We do studio press for design. We do synthesis for hosting, WordPress specific hosting. We now have a new WordPress-based platform called Rainmaker, which is kind of an all-in-one hosted solution. So very, very WordPress-centric.
Cool. Cory Miller, you want to tell us a little bit about who you are and where you're from and what you do?
You bet. So I'm from Oklahoma City. That's where our office is based. Started iThemes in 2008. We do plugins, themes, and training. The most popular plugin we've done is Backup Buddy. Then we have an e-commerce plugin called Exchange and iThemes Security. I started with WordPress back in 2006 on a blog, and I'm not a developer. And if I call myself a designer, I think Lisa would probably laugh at me. Half mediocre at best designer way back then, doing some freelance work. So, oh, and what do I do now? I'm chasing a 16-month-old baby boy around as he is getting into everything. So.
Well, I hope you've got him well and truly restrained for the next little while we're on the think tank. Lisa Sabin-Wilson, of course, author of WordPress for Dummies. You want to tell us a little bit about where you're from and what you do?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Lisa Sabin-Wilson. I live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I'm a partner of WebDev Studios, where we build custom solutions for clients. Also a partner of AppPressor, which is a plugin, a dev toolkit that allows people to create mobile apps in iOS and Android with WordPress. And also author of WordPress for Dummies and a couple of other WordPress books for Wiley Publishing as well. And Cory's son looks just like him, so if he grows up to be just like Cory, he's in trouble.
Matt Medeiros from the Matt Report. You want to tell us a little bit about where you're from, who you are, and what you're up to?
Yeah, sure. Matt Medeiros. I started a WordPress agency, co-founded the WordPress agency with my father about 5 years ago. Run a little podcast called The Matt Report, interview other WordPress entrepreneurs like everybody on this panel. We do WordPress professional services, themes, and plugins.
So we just lost you in the middle there, Matt. You started a podcast and then...
Started a podcast, and we do WordPress professional services and themes and plugins.
Fabulous. Tom Wilmot from Human Made, who is currently in Morocco and not able to get his hands on any alcohol. Tom, you want to tell us what's going on?
And not much internet, but we'll see how this goes. Yeah, so I guess I kind of started in WordPress back in like 2006 just as a developer. That kind of led to me founding Human Made with my brother Joe in 2010. And since then we've been kind of splitting our time doing professional services, so building WordPress power things for money. And also we built Happy Tables with Noel, who he's now a partner in Human Made as well. And also WP Remote, which so both of those things are kind of taking up more and more of our attention, more of our time. And on the side of that, we're also still doing client work.
Fabulous. Okay, for those that don't know, I'm Troy Dean. I'm the co-founder of Video User Manuals and WP Elevation. I'm also a bit of a developer hack. That's where I started off. Now we do a little bit of client services work, but my focus is on WP Elevation, training WordPress consultants in the business side of things, and Video User Manuals, the video plugin to help developers teach their clients how to use WordPress. Okay, so why are we here? What is WP Think Tank all about? It was an idea that came out of a series of conversations that I was having with these guys and some others on the WP Elevation podcast. And usually what would happen is we'd get to the end of the interview and the conversation would just keep rolling. And I thought there's a real hunger for long-form conversation about WordPress, the future of WordPress, where we're going, what our opportunities are, and what the challenges are. So I thought I'd invite a group of friends together to come on a panel discussion and talk about this so that we can all brainstorm, and hopefully the collective intelligence of us is greater than the sum of the parts. So that's why we're here. The format is pretty loose. We're just going to talk about, everyone's emailed me some ideas about what they think the opportunities and the challenges are, and we do also have some reader and viewer questions, some audience questions. So we're just going to throw this out to an open conversation. We're going to start with, Tom's just bounced out. I think he might be rebooting. So we're going to start with Lisa. Now, Lisa, you have indicated that one of the challenges with WordPress is education around the WordPress platform, and that you've identified these two communities of kind of newbie users who are trying to wrangle WordPress, and then enterprise users who are, and how you use WordPress to scale up to the enterprise solutions. I want to come back and talk about the newbie users because that's going to be a common theme, I think, throughout the day. So let's maybe start at enterprise. You've identified that one of the challenges is getting WordPress to work with a whole bunch of other integrations to provide true enterprise solutions. You want to talk a little bit about some of the frustrations and challenges that you guys face in your daily work at WebDev Studios doing this kind of stuff for enterprise clients?
Sure, I'd be happy to. At WebDev, we work with, as Troy mentioned, enterprise level clients, corporate level, and the challenges that we kind of struggle with on a day-to-day basis, and I know a lot of people on this panel do as well, is getting WordPress to scale. And the example that I gave to Troy in my email to him was using an example of like WordPress e-commerce. So if you're a small business and you have maybe 100 products that you're selling online, WordPress WooCommerce is a really good solution. But when you're working with a large-scale corporation who has products that they want to sell online, but their products number in the thousands or tens of thousands, and those products change on a nightly, sometimes multiple daily basis, the WooCommerce option, going in and creating the custom post type product and setting your prices and then going back in and editing it, when you're looking at thousands and tens and thousands of projects that change all of the time, the challenge becomes the best solution for that client, and does it become WordPress plus e-commerce? So when you're selling WordPress, it becomes more of a question of, does WordPress do e-commerce, but does it do e-commerce, and then does it scale to the level that enterprise clients need? Is it secure, and are they really going to be able to easily manage those products and those e-commerce sales that come in? So that's kind of the challenge that we work with clients. That's just one example.
And is this particular challenge, I want to talk to Cory in a moment about the e-commerce, is this particular challenge in the sales process, or is it in the discovery process where you start dealing with where you start discovering a project with a client and you get halfway through that process and think, okay, maybe we've bitten off more than we can chew, or maybe we're going to have to use a whole bunch of other third-party things and integrations to make WordPress do this?
Well, I think when it's definitely during the discovery process. This absolutely is not something you'd want to find out, once the active project is underway. That would be unfortunate. So it's definitely something that you discuss during the discovery process. So, when the enterprise client and you're having that sort of discovery research about what the project is all about, and they start talking about these products that they have and how many they have and the processes that they're using right now to update those products and publish them on a daily basis. It's working with them in planning and really finding the best solution from the get-go, because if you start implementing a solution that really isn't going to work for them, once you're midway through implementing, it takes a lot of undoing and a lot of work to kind of go back and do it over again with a process that works best for them.
Cory, do you want to you've obviously got a bit of experience with WordPress and e-commerce with Exchange from iThemes, which is the open source e-commerce platform for WordPress, and you obviously would have been hearing a lot of feedback and support tickets and feedback and input from customers using Exchange. You want to talk a little bit about what Lisa's saying and some of the challenge of getting WordPress e-commerce to work at that kind of level?
Yeah, I got to tell you, I defer to the experts like Lisa at WebDev and Alex at Crowd Favorite, who work with enterprise level. I have never been a part of that, and haven't. Exchange is about a year into our release of that, so I don't think I have a specific story from our experience to share with that. So I'd kind of defer to them. But I know talking to Jonathan from Shop Plugin that he had a very, very large site in particular he was talking about one time that was running, well over $1 million a year in sales. Now, WebDev and Crowd Favorite do things at multiple of that. But so, I've heard stories, and of course, WooCommerce is the most popular one, and I know they've got some pretty big stats on that, but I can't really talk specific to ours just yet, because we're at pretty much the beginning stages of getting our particular platform off the ground.
And was Exchange originally designed for the small to medium business? Did you think, well, we're not going to worry too much about enterprise integrations at this stage, we're just going to go after the small to medium business market?
Yeah, so right now we position that as, not everybody needs shipping options and advanced tax options and everything, and to sell everything under the sun. So our premise has been just like WordPress. When I started in WordPress back in 2006, I loved it because it was simple and easy to use. When I installed and used Joomla back in that day, it was like a helicopter dashboard. There's 500,000 options. And so with Exchange, we tried to take the same approach. You should only need features, or you should only see features when you need them. So by default, we've turned off a ton of stuff so that when, you shouldn't necessarily need to see memberships, like as a product, if you're only doing invoicing or a digital product. Same thing with VAT taxes. If you live in the United States, you don't need to see all that stuff. So we kind of came in as we want to help the person just getting started with selling their products or services online. We want to be the 5-minute, get your site set up and start selling solution.
Alex King, you want to talk a little bit about what Lisa's suggesting here, the challenge that WordPress e-commerce at an enterprise level and how this is part of a larger conversation I think that we're going to have throughout the day based on the feedback that you've given us, which is, does WordPress deliver what it promises? Is WordPress over-promising, and is the perception that it can do anything, but then you get to a point where, well, actually it just can't?
I think that there's some interesting forces being exerted on either side of WordPress right now. I think that one of the overall concerns is that WordPress is too complicated for users just coming into it, that there's too much going on, that it's not simple enough. And at the same time, at the other end of the spectrum, we've got people who need more sophisticated solutions and need it to do more and handle the types of situations that Lisa was describing. So I think that the project itself is at a bit of an awkward state. It's being attacked, people that would be using WordPress are turning to simpler solutions like Medium and things like that for simple blog posting saying that WordPress is too complicated now, and it's still kind of working its way into some of the sophistication necessary for enterprise, especially in third-party add-ons that have typically been designed for kind of the small and medium-sized business market.
Do you, when you're talking to enterprise clients about WordPress and e-commerce solutions, do you ever get nervous in that kind of sales process and think maybe this is something that WordPress is not going to be able to handle?
It's less likely for us to run away from WordPress specifically, but we might look at integrating with another platform for e-commerce, something like Magento or something like that, that's more specifically targeted towards e-commerce if the primary portion of the site is an e-commerce site.
Tom Wilmot, you want to chime in here and tell us a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, sure. So I think at the enterprise level, e-commerce is certainly something we see less of than, I guess kind of other types of sites that WordPress is being used to build. I think up until fairly recently, kind of echoing Alex's point, enterprise kind of level sites, we were using the WordPress core software, but not really using any add-ons or plugins. I think the plugin directory, the theme directory, mostly not aimed at the enterprise market, and often the requirements they have and the kind of quality bar that they want to set means that you kind of we would find ourselves building things from scratch a lot. So we would build, maybe they would have something e-commerce-y, but instead of going with one of the e-commerce plugins, we would build them something bespoke. That's certainly changed, I'd say, within the last year. We've done a couple of pretty big e-commerce-y sites for kind of enterprise clients, and we've used things like easy digital downloads, which I think strikes the kind of the right balance in between kind of being very modular and easy to tweak and change, which is something that we found is really important on those kinds of complex sites. And I think is something that say Magento does fairly well. So yeah, I think it's not something we have a huge deep level of experience in. It's not something enterprise clients are asking for hugely. I think there is definitely we're going to see more and more and more of it as WooCommerce is like used for so many small to medium-sized sites at the moment, and that's starting to filter up into the enterprise mindset. Or maybe we could use WordPress for our e-commerce site now. Yeah.
Brian Clark, you obviously know a little bit about WordPress and how it's being used all around the world. You've have a large user base that are using WordPress and using your products there out of Copyblogger. What's your kind of take on this? Is there a need for an enterprise e-commerce solution, or are we trying to shove a square peg into a round hole by using WordPress and things like WooCommerce and other third-party integrations to try and get enterprise clients using the solution?
Well, our primary focus is on the small to medium-sized business market. However, with hosting, we do have enterprise customers, quite a few actually. The interesting thing about the enterprise market when you pair it with open source is the strange aspect, and I'd love to hear what some of the other panelists think about this, but the more expensive it is, the more confidence they have in it. So naturally, starting from open source, you're at a disadvantage. It's purely psychological in many cases. Now, can WordPress adapt to any functional e-commerce need? I think with enough modification, absolutely. So I think you have to go after a specific goal, start with a core that we all truly believe in, as opposed to taking $70 million and building your proprietary CMS and then adding the parts that you need. To me, WordPress should be able to do the job, but I think you need to look at someone like Red Hat in the Linux space. How do you sell open source to the enterprise? You make it very expensive. It's kind of crazy.
Interesting. Lisa, do you think that there is a market for, is enterprise e-commerce solutions, are they so bespoke that there is no possible way that there could be, an enterprise core solution for e-commerce? Is it something that we just need to build and heavily customize for each individual project?
I really think so, because at the enterprise level, these builds are so custom. Sometimes it depends on the client as well. Sometimes they have an entire staff of people that is just focused on managing and maintaining the products on the back end. Other times, one example that I have, and actually the example I was thinking of when I wrote the email back to you, is a client who has their products stored in a third-party database, and we're writing, kind of a communication between WordPress and their system that they use to update and manage their plugins. So at least what I'm finding, and other mileage may vary, but what I'm finding is it really comes down to the project planning and discovery. And usually what I've seen it turn out to be is a different custom solution for every single client that we have. I can't think of a combination of WordPress plus this plugin plus this third-party service is going to be the end-all be-all answer for every single enterprise client.
So then WordPress, Matt Mullenweg's been talking a lot about WordPress being an application building framework. I wonder if there's more scope for some of these enterprise customizations to become reusable blocks that we can keep reusing. That's what I'm trying to get my head around at the moment is every project so custom that that's just not possible, or can we start developing some reusable blocks that we can add on to WordPress core for some of these enterprise e-commerce solutions?
Are you asking me, Troy?
Yeah.
I don't see that being built into WordPress core, no. I think that really I go back to my experience being that it becomes a very customized solution for clients, and definitely starting with the core of WordPress and moving from there. I can't see something like that being baked into core or built into core for any reason. Yeah, I think it's more of a custom solution on a per client basis when you're at the enterprise level.
Mm-hmm. And so, the obvious question is, so one of the things that you talk about is that WordPress, one of the things that you spoke about in your email is that for enterprise, the opportunity exists around the final product with integrations, cutting admin overheads in half and streamlining processes. Are we backing ourselves into a corner? I mean, this is, this might be a bit controversial, but are we backing ourselves into a corner by trying to use WordPress for these projects, or should we just be abandoning the WordPress mothership when it comes to these kind of projects and using something else that is better suited for enterprise e-commerce?
I don't think we're backing ourselves into a corner using WordPress. I think WordPress is a very solid solution at the core, and providing the custom solutions that meet the client's needs, kind of built on top of that. I think it's a stable solution for these clients. I don't think we're backing ourselves into a corner that way. No. I think Alex has a lot of experience, I think, in the enterprise software space. Am I right? King?
Sorry, I was on mute. I'm trying to get it off. Yeah, before, when I first started contributing to WordPress, I was actually working for an enterprise CRM company, and I spent 5 years in that space. And enterprise software tools, Oracle, SAP, all of these, none of them really work out of the box, right? They're basically a toolkit that professional services are sold on top of, and there's a huge customization project that's done to make the tool work for a specific business. Whereas WordPress has a philosophy of, this is a tool that works out of the box, and then you can mold it to various different things. And the amount of flexibility that you need to build into the system, right? Things from supporting different schemas to having, huge reporting tables and all this stuff is really far beyond what WordPress attempts to do. That said, when we see large clients coming to us with a WordPress requirement, a lot of times they've made WordPress as a technology choice because of the community, because of the lack of lock-in, because maybe they've had a bad experience with a proprietary vendor. And so they sometimes have philosophical reasons for wanting to use an open platform. And then the challenge is up to us. How do we reconcile the requirements that they have with the philosophy they want to approach for building their business on?
Matt Medeiros, you want to chime in here?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the clients that we work with, we're certainly not in the corporate or enterprise level. What we do get close to on that are local colleges and universities. But I was on a call a few months back with a Fortune 50 company, and we were pitching them WordPress for this particular. It was just an internal site, and the VP that we were talking to of technology, he didn't even want to bring. He was afraid to even mention WordPress at the meeting for fear of his job. He didn't want to bring it up. He said, "No, there's no way I can bring this up because our competitors don't use it, and if I bring it to my board and they say, why aren't we using what they're using? They're going to look at him and say, why are you even entertaining this blogging platform?" In terms of universities and colleges, we don't get any kickback, or we don't get anybody saying, give us something other than WordPress, but everyone is always open to an alternative. And we just say, no, we can build what you need with this, especially universities and multi-site, super useful for them. But a lot of them just come to us saying, hey, look, we've heard about Drupal too. What do you guys think? And we'll just say no. But in that space, that's the only feedback that I've heard, at least from the universities and colleges. But at the enterprise, yeah, I mean, times need to change.
Miriam, thank you for joining us again. How's your microphone? Are you working there now?
I think so. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. We've got Miriam. Everyone, meet Miriam. Yay! All right, technical difficulties over.
I'm looking incredibly tired. It's 12. I'm quite tired.
I know it is. Thank you very much for staying up and joining us. So what kind of, this is kind of segueing into a broader question about how WordPress is perceived by corporate clients or enterprise level clients. What kind of pushback do you get from clients who might hear about WordPress and say, well, it's open source, it's free software? Brian was saying that the more expensive these solutions are, the more enterprise clients seem to like them or seem to want them. What kind of feedback do you get from clients about this?
So most of our clients are located in Israel, and interestingly, I don't know why this is exactly, but it also might have to do with the way that we've positioned ourselves and the clients that approach us. They actually, when we work with enterprise level clients, they're actually looking to use WordPress specifically. And yes, they want open source, but out of the open source options which they've looked into, they want WordPress. I was just talking to a potential client a few days ago, and they gave me the rundown, which I usually give them. They go, well, we want open source because we don't want vendor lock-in. And then we know that Drupal is a good option, but the prices there are way too high. And so we understand that WordPress can do what we need well and at a lower price point than Drupal. And so can you give us a proposal? So they're not looking for other solutions. And also, I've mentioned in the past, I think even on our last talk, that we get a lot of people who have been wounded by the proprietary systems, and they are not interested in being locked into anyone anymore. They want out of that model, and they want open source. So it's actually growing quite tremendously here, the demand, even on the enterprise level. So I guess we're lucky in that way.
Interesting. I was at I presented a workshop yesterday to about 82 small businesses in actually mainly non-profits in the disability sector here in Melbourne. And at the end of the conversation, it was, well, what tools do we use to implement this kind of online strategy? And one of the first tools I mentioned was WordPress. And there was some audible, remarks in the room like, oh, WordPress isn't secure, and WordPress is. They were kind of poo-pooing WordPress as a kindergarten solution, and that it couldn't really handle their kind of requirements. One of the things that I've had on the email feedback as well is, how do we better position WordPress as a solution to clients with decent budgets and who are in the corporate or even the medium enterprise space? How do we better position WordPress as a real viable solution and avoid this perception that it's just a blogging platform and it's just not meant for real business? Anyone?
If it's okay, I think that that the way to do it is, it's not going to be a magical thing. It's a process, and that it's like when you're running a business, and so when you build a website, the point of the website is also to make revenue on that website, but also so that the next client can see that and hopefully be impressed by your work. So all of us who are running WordPress agencies or consultancies, we have to try to get that first big client, and then the second big client who we can say, hey, look at that first site that we did. And then, you know, between all of us, and we can use the WordPress showcase and show examples, and the more examples that we have, the more we can reduce that pain point of those companies and get them more on board, I think.
Something that I've noticed, just maybe within the last year or two, in the corporate enterprise space, is that initially it was, you know, WordPress is just a blogging platform. Tell me why you think, you know, WordPress can manage our .com, or show me other examples. A lot of these corporate .coms want to see examples of other corporate .coms using WordPress as their primary platform. But probably within the last year, all of the enterprise work that we have done at WebDev has been solicited. It's been the client coming to us, already had made a decision that WordPress was their platform of choice, either because they wanted to go open source, or they want the low overhead, or as it was either Alex or Miriam mentioned, that they had already been burned once by proprietary systems, and they wanted something that was vendorless, I guess, for lack of a better phrase. But it seems like there is a movement in the enterprise that WordPress is becoming something that clients are requesting at this point. So we're not doing a whole lot of selling WordPress on clients at WebDev at all. We're doing more, they're coming to us wanting WordPress and then working with them to create the solutions that they need.
Tom, in your email you said, I want to throw to you here because in your email you said that the big opportunity ahead of WordPress in the immediate future is the larger agency enterprise space. WordPress is really behind the curve in terms of penetration into the larger enterprise government projects. Big publishing has been leading the way, but I think we're on the cusp of an explosion in the amount of really large companies choosing WordPress as their CMS.
Yeah, so I mean, certainly most of the work we've been doing, and I think most of the work a lot of the bigger agencies have been doing, has been in the publishing space. So a lot of the big newspapers, those kinds of
Oh, I think we might have lost you there, Tom. Might come back to Tom, who's in Morocco with a bad internet connection and no beer. That just sounds horrible, doesn't it? Alex, you're in the consulting agency space. Do you want to comment on what Tom's talking about there?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I thought about this quite a bit last year when we were starting to talk with really big customers that had layers of people that they wanted us to integrate with and be able to work well with. We found that, you know, while we could execute technically, we didn't have the matching business side to match up with the folks that they wanted to work with. They're used to having a sales team that could fly out and give pitches. They're used to having an account manager that would work with various stakeholders kind of behind the scenes. They're used to having project managers working directly with each other, and then tech leads at all these different levels. And you know, like most of the shops in the WordPress space, we had come up kind of as a maker-led organization where our strengths were our ability to execute rather than the business relationships we had, our sales team, or anything like that. And I had an opportunity to spend some time at a conference called Owner Camp with a bunch of shops that were a lot more mature than we are. These were companies that have been around 20, 30 years and ranged anywhere from, you know, a dozen people to 80 some odd people. And so I got to talk with people about what these inflection points were like, what it was like to grow a business, what it was like to be working with these larger companies. And my takeaway from this was that we could get there on our own, but it would be really painful, and we'd be kind of doing what we had done to get to the point where we are now, which is make a lot of mistakes along the way. And so it really opened my eyes up to the need for us to be able to meet these companies where they are, to have a mature business development team as well as a mature technical team that could work with them the way they're used to working with other vendors. If it doesn't make sense for them to be evaluating 5 different potential vendors and always giving one a break for, oh, they're the WordPress vendor, they don't know how to work with us in this way. We'll just kind of, give them a free pass on this. That's not going to work, right? Well, we need to be able to compete just like any other enterprise software company can.
And is that just an education process, do you think? I mean, there's lots of, something we're going to talk about later, there's lots of education online about, around WordPress for kind of newbie users or people coming into the WordPress space or even WordPress developers, but I don't know, and I could be wrong, but is there much education around how WordPress can suit these enterprise level projects and enterprise level clients?
I don't think it's a WordPress problem. I think it's just a business problem. If you've got people with MBAs and things like that, like this is the type of stuff that they go to school for, right? To learn the business of the business. It's just a different focus than I think most WordPress shops have traditionally had.
Tom, thank you for joining us again. I'm just going to come back to you in a moment. Tom, you were halfway through a moment of genius when we lost you to the Moroccan internet connection. You want to just finish that thought?
Well, unfortunately, I've completely forgotten what I was talking about.
So you finally found some beer in Morocco, then, did you? So you were talking about working with publishing houses and working with clients who are essentially in the publishing business, and that you think that we're on the cusp of an explosion where. And I think what you're saying is that because businesses are starting to realize that content marketing is not a fad, and that publishing information and becoming a publishing house is actually the way. Brian Clark's been talking about the new what is the new rainmaker. It's all about media. I love the fact that Brian's no longer talking about content, that he's renamed it media, because frankly, content's a very dry, boring, sterile word. So there are more and more businesses turning to media. In fact, ANZ, one of the biggest banks here in Australia, have just launched Blue Note, which is a news portal. They're not reporting on finance news. They're not reporting on the share market. They're reporting on the news. They're a mainstream news portal now, reporting on the news, and it's all funded by one of the big banks here in Australia. So, and this is, Tom, I think what you were saying, that a lot of these larger organizations are now going to be looking to WordPress as a CMS because they know that WordPress is great at publishing media, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the publishing industry has been the obvious choice for WordPress because it fits so well into the default WordPress experience that, most news sites are almost blogs. But all enterprises have content, even if that content isn't necessarily in a blog format or even necessarily available on the web in kind of an article-y format, right? Like the Bank of New York, have a lot of content, and so they need a CMS to manage that content. Whether that content is being delivered, via an intranet, whether it's being delivered across various websites, they need a CMS to manage all of that content. And I think that those kinds of big enterprise, kind of cross-enterprise CMS decisions, WordPress isn't really being looked at yet, or maybe is just starting to be looked at. But I think that what's helping that, I think that big publishers being on WordPress is helping that. And I think this kind of WordPress as an application framework, one of the ways I'm seeing that manifest itself in the enterprise is that companies are now able to think of WordPress not as the whole WordPress admin plus a theme, at a domain that's a website, but they can think, well, we love the WordPress admin experience for our editorial team or our content editors, but we don't necessarily want to, to have it directly tied to a website. So maybe we'd like to plug WordPress into our existing, complex multi-application CMS workflow, and we'll just use the WordPress admin, so that our content people can have that beautiful experience. It's a big upgrade. And then we're maybe using some APIs to push that content out to wherever it's actually needed. Maybe it's in some apps, maybe it's on the website, maybe it's in an intranet, right? So we're certainly seeing like the most exciting enterprise projects we're involved in, WordPress is just one part of lots and lots of things that they're using to fulfill their kind of digital needs.
A couple of things here. Well, Jeff wrote from WP Tavern. We know and love him from WP Tavern. He said here, and this ties in exactly with what you're talking about, Tom. Is the future of WordPress? What if the future of WordPress is that it's just a collection of API calls? Themes are API calls, plugins are API calls, API everything.
Sure. I mean, I think that we're not far away from that already. Really, it's fairly easy to decide not to use the WordPress theming front end. We build plenty of projects where we're not using themes at all. It's easy to not use the WordPress admin if you don't want to. We built Happy Tables that doesn't use the WordPress admin. So you can already fairly easily switch those things out. I do think that the classic publishing CMS kind of app is obviously the most important app built on top of the WordPress API or whatever you want to call it. And so I think that that's obviously going to continue shipping with Core, and Core should continue to kind of look to improve that. That's going to be the largest use case. But I think we can absolutely continue to polish that kind of default app, if you like, that ships with WordPress, the publishing CMS, whilst also continuing to improve the kind of underlying APIs and making it much easier to kind of pick the things you want from WordPress.
Okay, and just maybe to just sort of start wrapping this thread up on the enterprise thing, because there are other things that we want to talk about here. But Ricky Lee, who's on our chat widget, has said, can you talk to us a little bit about, and which ties in perfectly with you, Tom, because you are a WordPress VIP partner. Is there an opportunity for the WordPress VIP program to be doing more in this space to educate enterprise clients about what is and isn't possible, and what is, the benefits that WordPress can bring?
Yeah, and I don't think that that's just a job for WordPress VIP at all. In fact, I think they are one of the few people who are doing that kind of outreach work at the moment. I think something that I know I want us to be doing as kind of an agency trying to be at that level, I think that we need to do a lot more outreach. I think like Miriam, a lot of the projects that we get are companies that come to us, already want WordPress, come and ask us to, do their WordPress development for them. Whereas I think there's this huge amount of projects out there, amount of work out there, where WordPress isn't necessarily on the table, and we should be there, flying the flag, asking the hard questions. Why isn't WordPress at this table? What does WordPress need to do to get at this table? Fight those misconceptions. I actually think WordPress VIP do a pretty good job at the moment of doing that. They spend a lot of time flying around the world, getting into those conversations and asking why WordPress, if it isn't being considered, why that is. So.
Cory, I'm keen to talk to a product company here. What I see WordPress, if Matt's right in that WordPress becomes an application development framework, and you look at something like Happy Tables, which is a great example of an application that's been built on WordPress core, and WordPress has become this series of building blocks that you can build things on. And this is probably a great question for you and Brian. How do you as product companies then, and we've seen Brian do it with New Rainmaker as well, but how do you then as product companies say, okay, well, here's a growth market of developers, application developers who are going to be using WordPress as core. What can we do? What other building blocks can we make to leverage the growth in this market and give these application developers, help them streamline their development process to add other blocks onto WordPress core to build out these applications?
Yeah, I think that's an awesome way for WordPress to go, is to be able to complete the spectrum and to be able to play on the enterprise level. My only input about enterprise is that I'd love for WordPress to kick Drupal's ass, because you hear about Drupal quite a bit in enterprise, but then you have companies, serious companies like the crowd favorites, WebDevs of the world, doing some awesome stuff. I don't even know if they can talk about it publicly, but some of the brands that I've talked to them personally about, my jaw drops and think that WordPress can go to that level. To your question specifically, I think the power of WordPress has always been that, my mom has, I think, 2 WordPress sites right now. It's ease of use. And so as far as the market goes, I don't know about the enterprise level. I think we're talking about maybe, and I'm just spitballing here, but maybe 1% of the market is enterprise, and they're really big, and they pay a lot of money to these awesome people here, which is awesome. But by and large, I think the products that are sustainable for our particular customer base are more like the small businesses, the bloggers, the freelance developers doing cool websites on WordPress that don't get the traffic that New York Times does, or some other enterprise level type work. Did that answer your question, or did I just talk in circles?
No, I think so. I mean, I think maybe I'll throw to Brian, who has built the new Rainmaker platform on WordPress as an application framework. I guess he's built an application on top of WordPress. We know it's WordPress, but you log in, it doesn't really look like WordPress. But also, Brian, if you can maybe continue that thread of what opportunities do you see there of developing other building blocks that developers can use to stack on top of WordPress?
Yeah, this all kind of ties back to several excellent points that Alex and Tom made. But really what we're talking about here is positioning to the rest of the world. We hear about the philosophical reasons for using WordPress as opposed to HubSpot. I started on WordPress in 2005, started Copyblogger in January of 2006 on WordPress. When we grew, some might say, well, you should go to something like HubSpot. And I was like, no way. Number one, WordPress can do everything I want with our custom enhancements. And two, I'm an open source guy. I mean, I think that your core, no one's going to be as smart as the developers at the core. No amount of money, I think. Excuse me. And plus, obviously, the lock-in fears that you have. But at the same time, you have to know who you're talking to. So the low-hanging fruit are the people that have the philosophical desire to avoid lock-in and to go with something like WordPress. But the market is heading in somewhere of another direction. The people who don't care necessarily philosophically, but what they want is something that's demonstrated to be solid and be reasonably priced. And I think open source allows you to do that compared to building from scratch a proprietary system. So it was good news to me to hear Matt Mullenweg, come out with the way he's thinking about WordPress, because we were thinking the same thing for quite a while now. And of course, no one wants to go sideways with Mr. Mullenweg. So I think it's a smart move on his standpoint. I think it was actually quite brilliant, because something that occurred to me that didn't for a long time is that the success of WordPress.com has actually made people think that WordPress is this very simple blogging thing, instead of the way it actually started and evolved, which is very, very powerful. So it's almost like it's up, to services like VIP and the rest of us in the market say, no, we use it, and the New York Times uses it. If a corporate client says, show me some examples, just say, well, do you get as much traffic as the New York Times? No? Okay, we can handle you, It's another way to position it. It's not about open source versus proprietary. It's you're doing content marketing, then you need to think like a publisher, and therefore look what the publishers use. That's WordPress. So our thinking with Rainmaker is, obviously we built our business serving the do-it-yourselfers. I mean, WordPress historically has been more like a PC, in the sense that you build it yourself, you tinker, you're under the hood, you swap things out, but you're also responsible for maintaining it and the things that come and go with that. I think where we're going, there's a whole blue ocean of people out there who don't want to worry about updating plugins. That actually scares them to death. Going back to the 90s, building websites, with just HTML or, some kind of a design program, when I found WordPress, I'm like, this is the greatest thing ever. Put my wife in front of WordPress today, and she's like, what? See, so, and my wife is a very smart person, but, this is not how the normal person thinks. I remember when we got into the WordPress market in 2008, And there were a lot of people who couldn't understand how we were selling so much because we seemed to not be catering to the WordPress community. But the WordPress community weren't our customers. It was business people. They didn't self-identify that way. So going back to the enterprise conversation, the low-hanging fruit will continue to come to you for philosophical reasons or otherwise. But to go beyond that, you have to start a completely different conversation. And that means that you have to start focusing on what does that MBA want? And that was my point with the pricing thing. Sometimes an MBA makes a decision based on, well, that's expensive, it's got to be good. It's crazy, but it happens all the time. And I think that's why you see the proprietary CMSs getting a lot of business that you think is a bad choice. And empirically, it may be a bad choice, but that's not how decisions are made. So I think we need to change the way we frame a platform that is built on core, which I think Matt is advocating that we do. And I think we need to change the way we talk about it as far as, classic just positioning. It's not necessarily about open source versus proprietary. It's about this is actually the best solution for you based on real world. And again, point at the publishers, because if a brand is going to be doing content and thinking like a media company, as they should, which is gaining a lot of mainstream acceptance, thankfully, then they need the platform that publishers actually use. And I think that's what WordPress has going for it. But I'll just say this, neither the New York Times or Copyblogger uses WordPress out of the box. We don't just install it with Fantastico and go, woohoo, Everyone's using some form of custom version of WordPress, right? And so our goal with Rainmaker is to make that, at least the solution we use, affordable to everyone without kind of the pain of building it yourself.
I'm going to throw this spanner in the works. I think one of the big, I was at a web developers meetup recently, not a WordPress meetup, a web developers meetup, and let me tell you, the two things shall never meet. I was at a meetup called Port 80, and I was talking, and most of the guys there were Drupal guys, and I was talking to them about, the topic of pricing plugins came up, and I said, we have a plugin that we sell for $24 a month, and it does this and this and this, and they just looked at me and kind of chuckled and laughed. And I think one of the big problems that we have is that a lot of the plugins and the themes that do like you look at Gravity Forms, for example, that does unbelievable stuff out of the box for like less than $50 for a single site license, and has such market penetration and has, I don't know how many users, but lots, yeah, and these products are priced at a point to appeal to the small business owner or the developer who wants to use relatively inexpensive blocks to build solutions for clients, add value, and then resell that as a finished product, that when the enterprise solution look at the WordPress ecosystem, they see all of these, what they consider cheap products being sold in a plugin marketplace. And I think that, what Brian was saying earlier, that, I just wonder if all of our plugins and all of our themes were twice the price, whether that would affect our perception in enterprise and whether or not it would actually affect any of our consumer sales. I don't know. Cory?
Yeah, I think the enterprise, and I'm the least qualified on the panel to talk about enterprise, but I think that's a wholly different customer segment than the bulk of WordPress that we cater to and some of the other commercial product people that you mentioned. So, like, we priced that accordingly because WordPress is free, and so you're starting from a different starting point there. From the typical user we sell to, either a blogger or do-it-yourself freelancer. They're coming from WordPress is free, and all these other cool things are free, and so they're pretty price conscious. When you go to the enterprise, my understanding is, that's a bigger company and someone making a decision that doesn't actually come out of their own pocketbook. And so when you go to pricing, I think that's just to your own customer segment. So we don't have the experience with enterprise, so I can't tell you. If I could sell $5,000 plugins every day, I would do that. Less customers, more money. I would do that every single day. But in the last 6 years that we've been in business, that just hasn't been the case within the bulk of WordPress. And I think, we're talking about enterprise quite a bit, but again, that's a very slim, market compared to the overall market in WordPress. Bloggers, do-it-yourselfers, small business owners, that are much more, the quantity is there versus these big enterprise, things. I like to talk about enterprise, people on WordPress because I like to brag about WordPress and what it can do. But by and large, you're talking about people like small business owners who just, they're pretty price, they're pretty worried about price, I guess I should say.
All right, hey guys, we're going to take a 10-minute break. I've just muted everybody, so we're going to take a 10-minute break so people can grab a beer. Looks like Matt Medeiros and Cory Miller want to go do some shots together, and people probably need to, use the lavatories. So we're going to be back in 10 minutes from now to continue this conversation, and we're going to be segueing away from enterprise. We're going to be segueing into talking about WordPress for relatively new users, and I'm sure there's some great conversations about what WordPress promises and what it actually delivers. We're going to talk more about the Rainmaker platform from Brian Clark and in fact how that can help solve that problem and why there's a need for that kind of thing. And is WordPress as easy to use as we think it is? So everybody take 5 and take 10 actually. We are going to be back in 10 minutes from now, and hopefully I'll be able to get this thing on my screen, and you'll see a nice little splash page that'll tell you that we'll be back soon. Hey, there we go.
There we go.
How about I unmute myself?
Unmute myself.
Somebody turn their speakers up.
They couldn't hear me.
Who's got their speakers up really loud? Someone has their speakers up really loud. I think it's Lisa.
I think it is me. Is that better?
There you go. I unmuted everybody else except myself. So I've unmuted myself. We're back in the seat. All right.
You probably have to turn down a little bit more, Lisa.
Then I couldn't hear you.
Can you hear me now, Lisa?
I can.
Okay. Okay. All right. Still getting a bit of an echo from you, Lisa. Sorry. Oh, no, that's better. That sounds good. Alrighty. So let's talk about one of the big frustrations I know we all have, because we've all had these conversations in the past and you've all been emailing me, and it's also what a lot of people are saying on the chat widget and in the audience questions that we polled them. WordPress promises a lot and it delivers a lot. But let's be honest. As Cory said, or I think it was Brian said, put his savvy wife in front of WordPress and she says, you know, what do I do with this? Where do I start? Let's be honest, the onboarding process of the WordPress admin dashboard isn't great if you've never used it. Tom and the guys at Human Made felt so strongly about this, they completely redesigned the WordPress dashboard when they built Happy Tables. Brian has done a similar thing with Rainmaker, making the user experience much better and much easier for the audience who is not so savvy. And WordPress has got such massive market penetration that, let's be honest, most people using WordPress are not developers, they are users. How I guess the question is, how do we overcome this challenge when we know that WordPress is relatively easy to use compared to the other solutions on the market, but there is still an onboarding process involved? I mean, hell, Sean Hesketh and I have built a business out of this. So how do we overcome this challenge, and how do we make it more seamless for users to use WordPress for what they want to use it for in the future? And I'm just going to throw this open to the panel. Has anyone got any ideas on where this is going to go over the next 12 months? Is the dashboard going to be stripped back and made bare? Are we going to have customized dashboards based on what you use WordPress for? Where's this going to evolve?
I think it's a huge opportunity. WordPress is never going to be able to, as a single product, serve all markets, right? The opportunity is to create verticalized versions of WordPress that serve specific markets and do a better job in those specific markets than WordPress out of the box does. And that's what Brian's doing. That's what Tom and his team did. I think that one of the things that I'd really like to see is more support for customization within the admin. It's something that I've been pushing for with the core team and the illustrious Mr. Mullenweg for a little while. And there's been some pushback there, and some of it I think is pretty legitimate. One of them, the things I hear is, well, it's really valuable for people to be able to Google for how do I do this in WordPress and have all of the screenshots look like what they're looking at. But I think that the benefits of verticalized versions probably outweigh the drawbacks in the long run.
Is this a... Sorry, Brian, we can't hear you. Let me just unmute you, Brian. For some reason, we can't hear you. You haven't muted yourself there, Brian?
It's actually a setting. If you hover your picture, you'll see a microphone.
There we go.
Wow. I don't know how that happened. What were we talking about? No, I don't think it's. I don't think it's the core dev's responsibility, and I don't think that really jibes with Matt's announced philosophy. I like that WordPress has all that functionality, but I don't think necessarily everyone needs to see that. But how do you make those decisions? Well, at the core, you don't. I think that's the responsibility of those of us in the vendor space. So our company is basically divided into three parts: editorial, support, and development. And it's editorial, even though we've been working with WordPress hands-on publishing longer than probably anyone, we're the ones who hated the interface. Because when it gets down to it and you're trying to remember how to do something that you don't do but maybe once a year, you know, and you can't find it, that is a serious productivity killer, right? So we started thinking in terms of for the content people, for the task. And we've thought in terms of vertical too, but we've kind of come to the conclusion that vertically you need vertical education. But if you're doing content marketing, pretty much your tasks are very similar regardless of what industry you're in. So we started thinking that way from an interface standpoint. What are the tasks? What do you do? And how should it be arranged? And that's still a work in progress, obviously, but I think we had a good educated guess at how it works for the type of people we're trying to reach.
This is something that's been going on for a long time, right? I mean, you know, I was trying to explain New Rainmaker to someone the other day, Brian, and they said, oh, what, so he's built Kajabi in WordPress. And for those of you that don't know, Kajabi is an online marketing platform. And I said, well, you know what? Sure, if that's how you want to think about it, essentially what he's done is they've built WordPress in a way that you can get in and get what you need to get done and not be distracted by anything you don't need to look at. So whatever you're doing, that's what you can see and that's what you can access when you need to do it. But let's have a think about some of the other solutions that have been around to try and solve this exact problem. So you look at all of the drag and drop page builders. As far as I'm concerned, they're trying to solve the same problem. Let's get into WordPress, get done what we need to get done in a really easy fashion. There was a comment here from someone, you know, is it time that we get all of the drag and drop page builders together to actually solve this problem? The Virtual Composer by WP Bakery is, you know, one of the largest selling plugins on Code Canyon. Love it or hate it, like it or not, there's a need for it because people get into WordPress and go, I want more control over how I build my page. I want to add testimonials where I want to add them, and I don't want to use shortcodes. If you use any other Web 2.0 product to build stuff, you don't need to use stupid things like shortcodes to insert a testimonials widget. So why are we still doing that in the visual editor of WordPress? So Brian solved this problem by doing something like New Rainmaker. Tom has solved this problem clearly by doing something like Happy Tables. You know, I think it's, and as I said, we've built a business out of teaching people how to use the WordPress interface. I'm quite glad it's a bit complicated because my business is doing pretty well on that. But this is a problem worth solving, yeah? Am I the only one that's kind of thinking along these lines?
Well, it's interesting the comment that you got because I would imagine it was dripping with a little elitist, dismissive tone to it, right? And you get that. There are a lot of just badass people within the WordPress community who are hardcore open source, very sophisticated, and all apologies cannot see beyond their own little world. And if I have any skill, I'm able to see what problems are and where things may be going. And that's what we did in 2008 when we did the first or one of the early design frameworks, and then that's what we've continued to do with Genesis. And you've got to make things easier because the people that are here are not the people that you're going towards. And for anything to grow, whether it be an open source CMS or regardless, that's how you think about how are you more inclusive. And I think there's a lot of people who are quite happy with the way WordPress is right now because as far as they're concerned, it's perfect. But that's not the problem we're trying to solve, and that's okay because like you said, it's good for business.
Yeah. Matt Medeiros, you're nodding your head.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I agree with Brian, and I love what he did because, and this goes back to how we ended the first half of the show, just talking about, maybe because there's a $30 plugin here or a $50 theme there, maybe the overall concept of WordPress is this sort of cheap and inexpensive thing that you can just boot up, and the higher folks are looking down on it saying, oh, that's way too cheap for us. And I think we're going in the direction of finally sort of turning that around and prices going up. Because if you were to look at Copyblogger, iThemes, if you were to buy the host of everything you needed to run your site from start to finish, not just theme and plugin, but security, backup, marketing, publishing to third-party sites. I mean, you're running the bill probably of a few $1,000s worth of themes. Your video tutorials plugin. A small business owner now is investing a whole heck of a lot more if they were to buy everything, right? And that's sort of what Brian was getting at before. There are people who say, you're not going to buy any plugins. It's going to be open source. You do everything for free. And I think it's a smart move to consolidate all of that onto a single platform. To have the people who are out there saying, look, I don't have time for this. Like, I don't want to subscribe to 15 plugin and theme renewal services a year for my site. I just want one. And if you look at the success of HubSpot, they're local to me, and I kind of butt heads with them a lot in local businesses. I mean, Brian, you probably know, it's probably like $600 a month minimum for their platform. And these, small businesses are getting sold on it because of the simplicity of having everything on that platform. I'm all in my own opinion, where I do like WordPress as this sort of plug and play, JSON API, all these different things. I'm also sort of afraid that we go beyond what got us here in the first place, and that's publishing media, or publishing content, now publishing media. I would hate to lose the essence of WordPress, because to me WordPress is something beyond the software. It's the people, it's the community, it's the developers, it's the vision of it all, and how it's all kind of grown to this point. And I hate to kind of all of a sudden say, well, we're an application platform now. That's just my own 2 cents that I wanted to add with that other discussion.
Well, it's interesting because Matt's vision was to democratize publishing on the web until recently, when he's included to democratize publishing and development on the web. So the vision is growing. 2 things I want to quickly say and then just throw open to the panel. If I'm consulting with small businesses and they don't have any resources in-house, they don't have any staff in-house that can manage their online marketing, but they get it and they've got a little bit of a budget, I will actually refer them to HubSpot, because I say to them, this is a very simple solution. You do not need to employ technical people to wrangle this, and all the education and support you're going to get from HubSpot is amazing. Yes, it is a more expensive solution. The other option is to employ someone locally, maybe 2 days a week, who's a little bit savvy, and get them to pull a solution together using WordPress. The other thing I want to mention is, if you look at ThemeForest and look at the #1 selling theme at ThemeForest, Aveda or whatever it's called, why does that thing sell so much? Because it has a control panel, as Cory said before. It's like a helicopter dashboard with so many knobs and dials and options and things that you can plug in and switch on. And I don't think we can deny the fact that people using this platform are buying that because that's what they want, because when you get WordPress out of the box and look at it, it kind of doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Now, I don't think there is one platform that we can build that is going to solve this problem, because I think the nature of competition, the nature of business means there are always going to be people competing in this space. But it feels to me like I'd like to see the WordPress dashboard get really, really minimal, and you be able to just add things by, ticking boxes. But out of the box, it's just very, very basic and very minimal, and then you can add pages, and you can add custom post types, and you can add comments, and you can switch these things on. But out of the box, just keep it really, really vanilla, really simple. I don't know. I'm going to throw this open to an open conversation.
Can I just
Troy,
respond to what you said? Oh.
Sorry, Cory. I'll just come back to you in a minute. Cory, Miriam?
In terms of the question here seems to be, is WordPress simple enough for users, but also does it have enough features to give your standard user enough control over their site? So first of all, in terms of the simplicity, I think one of the things that confuses users the most in the dashboard is the way the features are listed in the sidebar there, like posts and pages and all that, and like they all have the, like if I was really going to get into, you know, let's say the usability of it and make changes there, they all have the same weight, even though certain things are used on a regular basis and certain things are rarely used. For example, posts and pages are used very often, and then you've got plugins there at the same level and settings, which hopefully the user shouldn't be changing almost ever. And then I find the appearance section there very confusing because you've got appearance on the top level, and then under appearance you've got themes, which again the user should hopefully not be touching very often, but you've got widgets, which they will be using, and the menus, which they're really going to be using. So I would want to see maybe some kind of grouping there, you know, of like functionalities that you use more often and less often, and also that submenu, let's say, of appearance is strange. And then in terms of the Aveda theme, so I see it like buying your dishwasher. If any of you own a dishwasher, you probably bought it and it's like, oh, it has 50 cycles and it can do so many things, and a glasses cycle and I don't even know what. But then when you bring it home and you install it, you use one cycle all the time because you don't really need all those fancy cycles. So the same with Aveda, it's selling because it looks fancy, but I suspect that when users get into it, they're going to use it for the same thing that anyone else uses the site for, and they don't really want so much control. Like if someone doesn't have a design sense, they really want control over the color of everything, that's just too overwhelming. I just think that that by simplifying the dashboard and also trying, I mean, I personally wish that this premium theme development community would actually move in a direction of more simplicity. Drag and drop is useful, and I see that developing in a good direction, but the provision of control and features is not helpful to anyone. And then I always say that too many features means too little that can be done. Like, yes, you can, you know, your logo can flash and fly around the page, but if you really want your testimonials widget to be over here, and that's really important to you, well then your developer has to wade through 50 billion pages of code to find where that is and change it. So I think the attitude should be more simplicity on the back end, more simplicity on the themes, and then like you were saying, then like people can really build on top of that in a not a less painful way. So.
Cory, you want to pick up?
Yeah, I think the danger with WordPress, and I'm not on the core team, and I don't know where the core team is heading in particular, and the dashboard itself, but what got us here was the simplicity of my mom or me back in 2006 or even today can log into WordPress and publish posts and my ideas and opinions, and it's so simple. I remember that old dashboard, and it was after 2.0. It had maybe 5 or 6 options at the top, and it was super simple. And I think that's why we're having this discussion today, is because WordPress was so simple, a beautiful, elegant solution, and we've kind of, I think that's how software goes, and what I've seen at least, is that we tend to bloat it as we add more features. And so WordPress is 11 years old, right? So in 11 years, that's a lot of you know, features and code and stuff that we've got to this point where this is the timely discussion to be having, is why did, you know, everybody talks about Medium or Ghost or Tumblr. I think that discussion needs to come back where the philosophy of let's make it simple for the broadest, you know, user base, and then add complexity as you need it. That's what we tried to do with our e-commerce plugin, is instead of having all the features, turn them off by default and then only enable them as you need them. I think that's a good principle if I were to have any input into the discussion and the work that goes into WordPress in the next year or so. Is let's get back to simplicity with the dashboard in particular, because that's the reason we're here, is because all these millions of people have been able to use this beautiful, elegant software called WordPress.
It's interesting, I don't know if anyone saw the AppSumo promotion last week, promoting Velocity Pages, the newest drag and drop plugin builder for WordPress, which promises to allow you to never see the WordPress admin again. And one of the developers is Mark Jaquith, as we know, one of the core developers of the WordPress software itself. So, you know, and a lot of chat here in the chat widget about the fact that there is this huge disconnect between the back end, publishing content in the back end of WordPress, and what you see on the front end, and that disconnect doesn't exist on platforms like Ghost or Medium or Tumblr or Twitter or Facebook. I mean, you publish, where you publish, it looks like what you're going to publish, you hit publish, and it looks exactly like what you just drafted, yeah? Kind of like an email, that's what people are used to. So, and so I thought it was very interesting to see Mark Jaquith playing now in this drag and drop builder space, because even he recognizes as a core developer of WordPress that there is this disconnect between the front end and the back end, and it is a problem that needs to be solved. Alex?
Yeah, we're talking about simplicity as a goal, and we just spent the previous hour talking about functionality as a goal, and the two really fly at odds with each other. You know, if we're trying to add the level of roles and permissions and things like that that an enterprise company needs to have to manage their site, or at least thinks they need to have, and the type of editorial workflows and things like that, that's at 180 degrees from, you know, what we're talking about with trying to simplify the dashboard and make it easy for people to just get in and publish and get out. And I think that that's the crux of the struggle that WordPress has right now, is that it's serving such a large segment of the web that there is no one-size-fits-all. And that's why I believe that kind of the opportunity for verticals to say, okay, let's make this super simple publishing system that can compete directly with Medium. At the same time, let's continue to build a more powerful solution that can speak to the enterprise. And then there has to be degrees of things in between. Tom's Happy Tables product is a perfect example of this, right? They said, here is a group of people that are best served by this type of product, and they built that product.
So you're absolutely right, Alex. This is a very difficult challenge we're facing, and that's why I've collected some of the greatest minds in the WordPress space to come together onto this think tank to get this conversation going. So, you know, for me? I think it feels like a user experience, or it feels like an interface challenge, really, where we start with vanilla and then we can add building blocks. And Matt keeps talking about the application framework. I mean, I'd love to know what this. I guess I'd love to put a vacuum into Matt's head and see what he imagines the dashboard looks like in 12 months' time, and if it is just a core set of. See, the thing about WordPress, and I spoke to Tom about this at Pressnomics, the thing about WordPress is when you start building a web application, there's some beautiful things that WordPress does out of the box. User management, user registrations, lost password functionality, all that stuff that you don't need to build. If you were going to build this in, you know, PHP or Ruby or, Node.js or whatever, you'd have to build all that stuff from scratch, right? Whereas WordPress has all this beautiful stuff out of the box. So there are definitely merits in using WordPress as an application framework, but it does kind of feel like there's a ways to go before it becomes a true application framework, because there is all this stuff built into core that is designed for blogging and designed for content management, and not all applications are going to require those functions. So you're right, I guess it's a matter of stripping out what we don't need, just keeping what we do need, and how do we balance that to keep the user base that it's currently got and to keep the market penetration that's currently got. Maybe it's forked into, you know, WordPress is WordPress, and then there's WordPress, the application framework, that becomes a slightly, you know, a different stream of WordPress as we know it.
You know, and that's why it's.
Go ahead, Matt.
Sorry, I was just going to say the reason why I love the simplicity of keeping it about publishing content is only because we don't know where our content will end up a year from now, 5 years from now. It's going to be on a refrigerator, scrolling across our TV. People are going to be looking at our content on watches. So maybe that access of our content is through the democracy of the coding of WordPress and APIs and the technical side of things. But who knows where our content's getting pushed out to, and where people are consuming content in new ways for the future. And that's why, I just like the essence of keeping it as a content publishing platform.
There's another way to look at this, and again, I do not have a vacuum into Matt's brain, so that would be kind of gross. But it could be that he's saying, you know what? WordPress is pretty much where it needs to be for this core functionality, and maybe this is his way of announcing that yes, we're going to still keep modifying the core as necessary, but you're not going to really see this feature innovation because really we're expecting the marketplace that has developed over the last, what is it, 7, 8 years to take over. He is the CEO of Automatic too. He's got a big job, so that's pure speculation. But it could be if you look at what he actually said.
Lisa.
So I'm not a developer, but when you're talking about web application framework, a lot of that stuff, my understanding is, would sit under the hood of WordPress. But Lisa and Alex and them could say, okay, for my enterprise client, we'll turn on the code. Like, I'm sorry forgive me in advance, developers, for the example we're going to make, but WordPress multi-site, you have to enable that in code. Where I'm not going to go touch that. I am a base user. Maybe this much over a user. So, when we're talking about web application stuff and all these other things, put that power under the hood as long as it doesn't, make the install size, 500 megabytes or something. But, the simplicity of the dashboard, I think that can still happen. These two things can still happen. And I could be wrong, and I defer to my developer expert friends to tell me where I'm wrong.
Lisa?
I hope I'm not echoing. I've been trying to stay muted this whole time. Am I echoing?
No, all good.
All good.
Excellent. So, I think it goes back to the user, the person who is actually using WordPress and what they're using it for. When I go back to Matt's comment about WordPress and having to add all of these things on, these premium themes, premium plugins, and then security and hosting and all of that to run WordPress, it made me think about a review I got on Amazon.com for WordPress for Dummies. So that book is very much geared towards a new user, somebody who is brand new to WordPress, wants to learn it. And I got a 1-star review from somebody who said that my book was a bait and switch because they weren't told that they would have to buy a domain and buy hosting and make any kind of investment because WordPress is free and free to use, and that's what it said on the cover of the book. So a lot of times it goes back to educating people and helping them understand what WordPress is and what it isn't. And out of the box, WordPress is a content management system. You can blog with it, you can create pages, you can create content, and you can make it look okay with default themes and free themes you can find in the repo. What it isn't is you're not going to end up with a website like the New York Times out of the box without a little bit of maybe skill of your own, elbow grease, or investment in hiring people that do know how to do those things to make that happen for you. So it's really what the individual, on a use case basis wants to do with WordPress. As to whether or not those things can be built onto it, added onto it, and played around with. So for your usual blogger, somebody who's going to WordPress.com who just wants to have a blog, it's perfect. For other custom solutions, it requires, certain plugins, certain themes, certain custom solutions, certain API calls. So it really goes back to it being a very individual experience.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. In a sense, it's been this way for a long time already. So it really is hard to decipher what Matt is truly alluding to.
It's funny, some of the, you mentioned, Matt Medeiros was mentioning security and backups, and Lisa just touched on it then. One of the reader questions, audience questions we have here is, so this is someone brand new to WordPress, yeah? They've just started using WordPress. One of the first things they notice, Cory will be very happy about this, one of the first things they notice is, why doesn't WordPress have a backup solution built into it? Now, I know there's VaultPress, which, you can, and there's, Jetpack, you can add all this stuff on, but their first question was, well, I've just installed WordPress, I've just started using it. It strikes me as a little odd that it doesn't have a backup solution built into it.
Well, historically, that was a host position, wasn't it? mean, like your web host usually had automated backups that they would run for you, but I think users want more granular control than that.
Yeah, I guess it's interesting that this is what someone's expecting when they first start using WordPress out of the box, and within the first 10 minutes they go looking for a backup solution. I mean, and I think, you know, we're all seasoned veterans. We've been using WordPress a long time, so it's difficult for us sometimes to see the forest for the trees. And I love getting people to use WordPress for the first time and say, like, I was showing WordPress to a client recently, and he looked at the visual editor. He said, "Oh, great! So I can just add images." And he grabbed an image off his desktop and threw it onto the visual editor. And of course, the image just opened in the browser. This is pre 3.9, by the way. Image just opened in the browser. He looked at me and said, "Well, that's broken, isn't it?" And I said, "No, actually, it's not. That's just how it works." Of course, 3.9, that problem's been solved. But it's interesting to get the perspective of people who are WordPress virgins, as I call it, when they start using it, and it doesn't quite function the way they would hope it would. Yeah, I guess it's just an interesting perspective. Alex looks like he's bursting with something to say there.
Yeah, I think that part of the challenge here is that WordPress as a product, as an open source product, is competing against hosted services. And so people come in with expectations set from using these hosted services where everything is provided for you, oftentimes for free. The whole "you are the product being sold" thing. Whereas WordPress does not do that unless you go to WordPress.com. And then you're getting WordPress as a service rather than installing it as a product, just like any other product you install and maintain on your system.
Yeah, that was pretty savvy. But that's what I'm saying, is that people expect that because of social media, you know, and that's why, you know, we can rail against digital sharecropping all we want, and yet still people will go to Medium, right? You know, Facebook didn't really teach some people the lesson about building on someone else's land. So it's up to us to, you know, provide the hosted solution that is powerful enough. I mean, the way we think about it, you know, the hosted solutions out there, you know, you have simple, you have powerful, and you have affordable. Choose one, maybe two, and we're trying to balance all three. You know, you have something like Squarespace. It's simple and it's somewhat affordable, but if you're really doing content marketing, no, not at all. On the other hand, you have HubSpot, very powerful, not affordable at all, and in some cases not even simple. So that's the sweet spot. We're trying to hit it. It's not easy, for sure, but that's the holy grail, I think.
Okay, let's segue into a couple of audience questions here. Maybe this is one for Tom, and I know Tom's got good answers to this because I asked him on the podcast, and he had some great things to say. A question here: with thousands of WordPress designers and developers out there, and by the way, I didn't solicit this question. This came in from Pia Larson at Fingerprint Marketing. With thousands of WordPress designers and developers out there, how do you distinguish yourself from the Walmart-type experts? Despite how easy it is to use, it still requires a ton of experience, knowledge, and creativity to build a site from scratch on the platform. The discovery process is the same. So how do you communicate all the value you bring to a project when you're using open source software? Tom?
I mean, the way you differentiate yourself in any commodity market is go very niche. I think that Happy Tables differentiate itself in the theme market by, one, being hosted, but also going very niche. So find a niche, maybe find and I think when people hear that, they hear find a niche, they still think too big. I mean, go very niche, right? Like, if you're going to create a new premium theme shop, maybe you create a new premium theme shop for companies that specialize in dog grooming, right? And you market yourself just to those people. If you're the only voice you've got the whole internet to market to, so that's a huge market even in of itself. So maybe you could just specialize even in a subset of that market. But if you can then market directly to those people, you're the theme shop that people think of when a developer is building a site for a dog grooming salon. You're the place they go. Where that is how you differentiate yourself within that market.
Yeah, and it's kind of it's I look at Rainmaker, and I kind of think that this is what you guys have done with Rainmaker, is that I look at it as niche, not in a vertical as such, but in a user type. You've actually targeted a user type that could be in any particular industry, but a user type who wants to solve a specific problem and achieve a specific outcome. And so Rainmaker for me is a platform built on WordPress that is targeted at a specific user type, not a vertical, so to speak.
I think that's fair to say. Again, we did experiment with going very heavily vertical with in the real estate market, but what we found is that that's really a function only of education. You know, if you're performing what we're teaching and what is content marketing best practices, those are very similar things. Now, so that's why we kind of have carved out our own little space. As far as we know who these people are because they are us, right? We don't buy Super Bowl ads, and we don't have an outbound sales team for our inbound platform. You know, we built the entire company bootstrapped with content marketing. So in that sense, we know who we're talking to because it's us. Now, the gamble there is, are there enough of those people, and is that segment of user type growing? And that's what we'll find out.
Quick question for Alex King. Will WordPress, and you might not be able to answer this, but you might have some insight, will WordPress need to forego backward compatibility at some point?
I don't think we can say that until we see some of the decisions that are made in the future. I think that I think it's pretty remarkable what has been done so far to ensure backwards compatibility and yet still move the platform forward. And the folks that are doing those gymnastics are just getting better at it. So probably at some point some things will need to break, but it's certainly going to be a very long conversation before something like that would happen, in my opinion.
I was talking to Gary Pendergrast, who works for Automatic, recently here at a Melbourne meetup, and he said, yeah, I just doesn't think it's going to happen because there are so many users tied into legacy functions and features that, and this is a conversation I think we even had last time on Think Tank number 1, is, you know, do you think backward compatibility is holding WordPress back?
No, I don't. I don't think that's what's holding it back.
Okay. Brian?
Me either. I agree 100%.
So what is holding it back, Alex?
I think that Lisa, can you mute? Sorry. I think that you know, it's the same thing I've been talking about for most of the discussion here, is that one product can't serve all the different people that are trying to use WordPress for the needs that they have, and that we need to figure out ways to better serve these different verticals of people. And you know, content marketing is one vertical, right? And then people that are wanting to publish medium-style articles, that's another vertical. People that want to have video sites, that's another vertical. People that want to have small e-commerce sites is another vertical. People that want to use it as an app platform. I personally think that WordPress is not a good general-purpose app platform, but if it's sort of a content publishing or logging platform, I think it can be very good for that. All of these people have very different needs, and it doesn't make sense to think that one out-of-the-box platform is going to serve all of them.
All right, hey guys, we're about 15 minutes away from end of showtime. So what I thought I might do is just spend the next 15 minutes just to give everyone an opportunity to tell us briefly what you're excited about over the next 3 months that's happening in your business and in the WordPress space. What is it that has got your your heart beating a little bit faster than normal. I've just thrown this at you in the wild, so I'll give you a moment to think about it. Matt is contemplating as we speak. So maybe I'll start off. I'm very excited because I'm coming to Chicago in a couple of weeks to speak at WordCamp Chicago. Are you going, Matt, by the way?
No, not this year.
Right. Is anyone else going to WordCamp Chicago? Lisa, I know you are because you're coming along to our masterclass on Monday to be interviewed. Alex, are you going to Chicago at all?
No, my next WordCamp is Orange County.
Okay. Well, I'm very much looking forward to coming to WordCamp Chicago in a couple of weeks to speak on Saturday. I'm up against Nason. Holy crap, I better make it good because, he's a big hitter, I've heard, and he's going to be very popular. So that's what I'm excited about in the next few weeks. Miriam Schwab from Illuminea, what are you excited about in the next few weeks?
In the next few weeks? Well, we just actually had WordCamp Israel on, I think it was Tuesday. So I'm still recovering from that. It was actually our best one, so if I can say over the next few weeks, I'm excited about how that turned out. We got our largest turnout ever, over 300 people. We had it at a really cool space in Tel Aviv. We had a speaker from iThemes come, Joel Bronkowski, and he was fabulous. He was such a hit. So that was really fun. I'm still kind of on a high from that. And over the next few weeks, I'm looking forward to recovering and getting back into normal life.
Awesome. Joel is a great guy. He's going to be at Chicago giving a lightning talk as well, so I'm looking forward to hanging out with him again. Matt Medeiros, what are you...
People loved him.
He's great. Matt Medeiros, what are you excited about, my friend?
Well, you know me. It's exciting to be in the WordPress space and talking to other people launching WordPress businesses, so I'm always excited to see the amount of unique ideas that you and I probably see a lot of behind the scenes, people coming up with new products and services, and that's always cool. And I'm excited to see more people looking to get into starting a business, be it a developer, or designer, or service business. It's great to see that, again, WordPress being bigger than the software, enabling people to literally change their lives and have a good, healthy lifestyle, good income, and be able to build whatever it is that they're looking to build. So I'm excited for that stuff.
Are you doing? Does client services still kind of get your heart racing, or do you kind of get more excited about the podcast?
Does it keep the lights on? Is that what you're saying? The client services stuff is what keeps the lights on. It is great because it is something that I started the business with my father, which is always a fun ride, and it's great to see how even he, being over 50 years old, is using WordPress and how he's actually selling it to clients and how it has changed his life to be able to teach other people a technology, as basic as that sounds. It's amazing to see, again, the simplicity of WordPress, him being able to adapt to it and then teach other people is pretty good. But we like building solutions for clients. It's what keeps the lights on. But the podcasting and sort of the themes and the product stuff that we're doing is slowly coming from the sidelines.
Cool, awesome. Lisa Sabin-Wilson, besides hanging out with me in WordCamp Chicago in a couple of weeks, what are you excited about?
Well, Chicago I'm extremely excited about. Shortly after that is WordCamp Milwaukee, which is my own hometown. So I'm always very excited about that as well. Real excited about some of the custom projects that we're doing at WebDev Studios. I just really love what I'm doing there. And also excited about the work we're doing at AppPresser. We've been out for about 6 months now, and we're starting to see some really interesting apps that people are putting out using AppPresser and WordPress. WP Armchair is, if people follow the WordCamp with David down in Miami, WP Armchair put together an app that you can download on iOS and Android to kind of have a social network surrounding the WordCamp that you're at. So I think Miami and New York and I think Philly is now joining the WP Armchair app, so that's a lot of fun.
Very cool. I'm just checking out the WP Armchair site right now, and that looks like a great idea. I'm going to have to make sure I get onto that. Cory Miller, iThemes, what has got your, apart from chasing your 16-month-old around the house, what has got your heart pumping a little bit faster these days?
Yeah, so with the business, it's really three things. So iThemes Security, one of the most popular plugins in WordPress, downloaded 2.3 million times and growing. We just released two-factor authentication for that. And the second would be iThemes Exchange turns 1 year old in July, and we're continuing to iterate on that to make e-commerce simple and easy to use. And then the third would be Sync, where you can update all your sites remotely via one dashboard. We've got an iOS app coming after that here pretty shortly. Personally, we're building a house, and I think the next, so hopefully I'll be in the house here in 2 months. But the first travel I think I have down on the books would be WordCamp Dallas, or DFW. That's kind of our hometown WordCamp that we went to, and it's been kind of on hiatus for a couple years. So I'm hearing rumors that's coming back in September, and I'm excited about that.
Awesome. So is Sync similar to Managed WP and WP Remote? Is it in that kind of space?
Yep, absolutely. So Managed WP and then Remote, being able to update sites remotely and then install theme plugins from one dashboard. That'll be coming next week too. So.
Nice. I like it a lot.
Yeah, two good players in the space.
Awesome. Brian Clark, what has, I don't know how you manage to do everything you do, my friend. You must have an enormous brain with the amount of stuff that's going on at Copyblogger. How do you keep up? You've just come off the Authority Conference. I know people here in Australia who are still recovering from the Authority Conference, and they weren't even putting the whole thing together. So what's got you excited at the moment in your business?
Yeah, I'm pretty happy lately. I don't know what to do about it. It's not my normal MO, and I got to be disgruntled about something to keep going. But no, we've entered a new phase of the company in which we've got obviously the DIY side that got us here. StudioPress continues to beat its best quarter ever every quarter, which is amazing. We're always waiting for that to not happen, but that's a good thing. Synthesis, our managed WordPress hosting, has been growing exponentially for about 18 months, which is exciting because we really went into hosting to make sure we got it down cold for Rainmaker, which is, you mentioned it several times, is our new kind of hosted all-in-one solution. So this is the first time we've ever soft launched something so softly that it's never even appeared on Copyblogger ever. But we still got our first 1,000 users, and we're basically serving them while taking their feedback and iterating on the fly throughout the summer, and then I think in the fall we'll basically open up wide to the public. But it's a great time, so I can't complain.
Awesome. Are you going to WordCamp Chicago by any chance?
No, I'm staying home with the wife and kids all summer. I had a pretty extensive spring of speaking and traveling, so I'm grounded right now.
Good on you. Awesome. Well, I'm hoping to catch up with Brian Gardner while I'm in town as well. Alex King, what are you excited about over the next few weeks in Crowd Favorite?
Well, I mentioned WordCamp Orange County, which is put on in part by Brandon Dove and Jeff Zen, who are now part of the Crowd Favorite family. And so there's going to be a group of us coming down. It'll be great to get some time to hang out with them in person. And we're also hiring and growing the team, so we've been focused a bit on that. And obviously, those are sort of the foundational pieces that allow us to do everything else. So important to focus on that stuff.
And I believe Kareem is going to WordCamp Chicago. We've been emailing each other, and we're going to try and hook up and have a coffee while we're there, and hopefully I'll be able to pick his brain and learn some stuff from him as well.
That's correct. Yep.
Awesome. Well, hey, I just want to put a big thank you out to all of you guys. I know that you're all very busy and have very busy schedules, and I'm humbled and honored that you all chose to come and spend some time with me on WP Think Tank and to have this conversation. I hope you found it valuable and enjoyable. I know our audience have. For those of you who are watching, subscribe to get updated about the next Think Tank. We will never send you anything except stuff related to Think Tank. Subscribe at wpthinktank.com so that you don't miss the next one. We're going to try and roll these out once a quarter. So the next one I think is in August, and then one in November. And feel free to give us any feedback on how you'd like to see this this format work, and also please feel free to tweet our guests and thank them, thank the panelists for being on here and giving up their time. Miriam, I think it must be close to 2 a.m. in Jerusalem where you are right now. I'm amazed you haven't fallen asleep at the computer. Thank you again. Check everything out at wpthinktank.com. You'll be able to see a replay of this. It's Google Hangout Live on air, so it is recorded by YouTube. We'll post the recording up on the site. And everyone on the call, I wish you all the best for the future, and I look forward to hanging out all again with you soon on another Think Tank panel discussion. But for now, happy pressing of words.